Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to tell you about my friend, Dr. Boaz. I met Dr. Boaz when I was 9 years old. Like many Virgin Islanders, I was working in my parents' business. My dad does boat refinishing, and I was his receptionist. Dr. Boaz walked in. He was tall and bearded, and he was wearing flip-flops because it was Nanny Key. And he said, "Do you know what an airy is?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "An airy is a large bird of prey's nest." I want you to remember that. I wrote it down, and I remembered it for the next time. We struck up a conversation about the newest Apple devices. At that point, I think it would have been the oncoming iPhone 4, which was a big deal. That one had a camera in the front. We were really excited about it. We talked about the supply chain that made that iPhone. We talked about how it would change communication. And we talked a little bit about politics. He was a staunch conservative. He had worked his way to be exactly where he was, built up enough wealth to buy this boat that he loved so much. He traveled the world and was an avid diver. I, on the other hand, was 9. My political beliefs were still forming, but I very much leaned into the idea that it takes a village to succeed. And if you don't have a village, or if your village needs more support, that's where the government steps in. Over the next few years, when he'd come in to get his boat refinished at BVI Painters, we would have long conversations. In our last conversation, he said, "I want you to remember you can connect with anyone." And I think about that every day. Not just because he passed a few weeks after that, but because in a time like this, where it's so hard to talk to people with different political beliefs, it's important to find a middle ground and try and be open to different perspectives. He would say some pretty strange things about immigrants, and I'd say that actually is not true. And I'd pull up the sources and I'd actively fact check him, and he'd be fine with it. On the other hand, my naivete as a young person would cloud my ideas of how things worked in the real world. And he would gently remind me that things don't work that smoothly, systems have friction, and smaller systems will have less frictions because they'll have less moving parts. A conservative to his core. He was a lot older than me. He was in his 60s. My parents would keep a watchful eye as we had our conversations. And I'm really grateful that I had that friendship and that they allowed me to do that. So if you have a friendship that is tough right now because of politics, if you can find it in you, keep trying. You will make that person's world bigger through your experiences. And they will make your world bigger through theirs. Whether they're older, whether they're younger, or across racial or cultural lines. Whether they live a different lifestyle to you, are of a different sexual orientation, or just think in ways that you think are a little bit odd. Just because you don't understand something doesn't mean that it's bad. And learning about the world as an academic is one of the most beautiful things that we can do. It is stranger and more beautiful than I ever could have imagined. Every time I look at science, I see how beautiful God's creations are. How beautiful he made each cell that stack up to each organism that make up the galaxy. Dr. Boaz showed me how to do that. He told me about how those cells worked. And even though we thought differently about politics, You reminded me how beautiful the world is. I've written a song about him called Counting Days. And if you'd like to hear it, please click right here. Goodbye. See you next week.